Hello everyone, Dr. Hall with you again, and we are in the home stretch. This is the last section of lecture 7. We're going to finish out the cranial nerves by talking about cranial nerves 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, all in one fell swoop. So let's get started. Cranial nerve 8 is known as the vestibulocochlear nerve. It doesn't usually have that hyphen in there, but your first time seeing it, I put it in so you can kind of break the word down. It is a sensory nerve only. It is also sometimes referred to as the auditory nerve, and it's what is bringing the signals from our ears for sense of sound, as well as head position and movement. So you can see it in the diagram here on the left in this kind of bright pink vestibulocochlear, maybe, I don't know, is that orchid colored? I don't know. So it's right behind the facial nerve, right, which was number 7. The vestibulocochlear or auditory nerve is number 8. So vestibulocochlear is a more accurate term than auditory because auditory would only refer to the sound function. But that comes from the cochlea. So the cochlea is the structure inside our ear. We'll learn more about that later in the course. So it's this kind of snail-like structure here. That's the cochlea that is responsible for hearing. Let's try that in red instead. And then up here we have the semicircular canals and the vestibule. And that's that part of your inner ear that knows if you are right side up or upside down. It knows if you're accelerating or decelerating. It knows if you're spinning around. So that's our vestibular system. So now it makes more sense. Vestibulocochlear nerve. And you can thank your vestibular system for making you really dizzy if you've been spinning around. That is thanks to that part of our inner ear. So we have now added vestibulocochlear nerve to our collection. That is a sensory-only nerve. Now notice that the next two, 9 and 10, are both mixed nerves, and then the final two are motor nerves only. Let's get into it. So cranial nerve 9 is the glossopharyngeal nerve. So glosso refers to tongue and pharyngeal refers to pharynx, which is the throat. So it all has to do with the tongue and the throat. And so if you can remember that, you can remember what the nerve does. So it is a mixed nerve. So sensory-wise, it's going to do the sense of taste on the posterior third of the tongue. So you might remember that the facial nerve did the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. The glossopharyngeal nerve conducts the axons from the taste buds that are coming back from the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. And then the motor function for glossopharyngeal, this is where the throat side of things comes into it, is the muscles that are involved back here for swallowing. So when you swallow something, right? There's muscles back in here that do that. So if we look on the diagram, we can see it's kind of this pale yellow color right behind, of course, the vestibulocochlear, right? They go in order for the most part. So that's a glossopharyngeal mixed nerve, glosso tongue, taste on the posterior 1/3, pharyngeal, motor, swallowing. Number 10 is the vagus nerve, and it comes from the Latin word that refers to wandering. So if you've ever heard the term vagrant, that's the root of that word as well, because this nerve goes everywhere. So it comes out of the brain, right behind, of course, the glossopharyngeal nerve. So cranial nerve 10, the vagus nerve is here in orange. It's a little hard to see because we've got this other nerve kind of over top of it, but so you can see it's right there, that kind of orange or salmon colored nerve. So these cranial nerves come out from the brain because they're cranial nerves, and then they're going to travel down through the neck, and then they go everywhere. They supply all of our internal organs, basically. So the vagus nerve is really important for our autonomic nervous system, particularly the parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system, which we're going to talk a lot more about later in the course. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it here, but I just loved this little diagram where you can see like all the network of axons that are coming off from the vagus nerve, supplying the heart, the lungs, the entire digestive system. Super important nerve. Sensory and motor, mixed nerve. Both 9 and 10 were. Okay, 11 and 12 are just motor nerves. So 11 is called the accessory nerve. Sometimes it's referred to as the spinal accessory nerve. Let me grab, so let's use blue here. So here it is. It's this kind of light blue nerve on each side. And sometimes it's called the spinal accessory nerve because it gets some of its nerve roots down from the spinal cord as well as from the brain. This is a motor-only nerve. Let me just show you. So it's going to supply two muscles. One is the sternocleidomastoid muscle, which is kind of the strap muscle of your neck that you can really feel, like when you turn your head, you can really feel it kind of popping out. Sternocleidomastoid muscle, and then also the trapezius muscle, which is right behind it, which you can see on that same diagram right here, your trapezius muscle or your traps back here. And when those muscles contract, they lift up your shoulder blades, right, and shrug your shoulders. So the accessory nerve is motor only for the sternocleidomastoid muscle in the neck and the trapezius muscle in the back. This is it, number 12, hypoglossal. Again, the name is telling you a lot about this nerve. So hypo means less than or underneath. Glossus, we talked about already, means tongue. So in this diagram, you can see this is the hypoglossal nerve here, and it comes down under and supplies the tongue. This is a motor nerve, and it supplies the muscle of the tongue. The tongue is basically one giant muscle, and you can do lots of different things with it. And so it is the hypoglossal nerve that allows you to actually move your tongue. Pretty cool. All right, so how'd we do? So we had left off with vestibulocochlear nerve, which was sensory only for hearing and vestibular sense that can make you dizzy. Then we talked about glossopharyngeal, tongue and throat. So posterior 1/3 of the tongue, taste, and throat swallowing. So sensory and motor for that one. The vagus nerve, which is going to go down to all of our inner organs, our viscera, and be part of the autonomic nervous system. It has sensory and motor functions. And then the last two are motor only. So accessory nerve for shrugging your shoulders and turning your head, and then the hypoglossal nerve for sticking out your tongue and doing other things with your tongue. So that's it for all 12 of the cranial nerves. In this entire lecture, we talked about what is a nerve, right? It's a bundle of axons because the neuron cell body can only live in the brain, the spinal cord, or in ganglia. So sometimes you have a long ways to travel. So you have lots of axons that need to travel. They bundle together in nerves. It's good cord management. Major peripheral nerves in the upper extremity, we learned about the radial, the median, and the ulnar nerves, which all come from the brachial plexus. Then for the lower extremity, we learned the femoral and the obturator that come off of the lumbar plexus, and the sciatic nerve, which comes off of the sacral plexus. And then we did all 12 cranial nerves. So well done. Highly recommend flashcards. Also highly recommend the funny little drawing of the face, which is in that one video that is part of your media assignments. So definitely check it out because this is a lot to remember, but you can do it. So I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Lecture 8, we'll talk about spinal cord and reflexes.